Okay. For those that do not know me, my name is Dr. Dawn Dennis. So welcome to our Big Data Symposium. Again, we are so grateful for you to be here tonight with us to share your work and to, share knowledge in a space that is so supportive. I am from the Department of History, so I am glad to see Dr. Chatterjee and others as well. So again, this is the first night of the College of Natural and Social Sciences virtual Big Data Student Symposium. I would like to introduce our co-hosts for the evening, Montiel Ayala, Dijon Shavada, and Jonathan Vilanowith, who served in the role as GIS techs this semester. They are really instrumental in, again, student support and faculty support as well, and we are so appreciative for their expertise. This is our fourth year of the Big Data project, and tonight's program is centered on geospatial dialogues, and students will present their works in progress that focus on the natural and human environment, okay? Our keynote speaker is Senior Solutions Engineer for ESRI Canserina Kurnia. ESRI has been a committed partner from the inception of this project, which Dr. Jessica Bodo-Creed was our original project manager, and we are so grateful for the continued partnership and support. Now, without any further ado, please help me welcome our Dean, Dr. Renee Vilanowith, to start this evening. Dean.
Hi, folks. Welcome, first of all. Thank you for attending. And most importantly, thank you for spending a whole semester working on this project. It's funny, when I think back, it seems like maybe we started talking about this 10 years ago. I know it wasn't 10 years ago. It might have been maybe something like 7 years ago or 6 years ago, but either way, it started literally by talking to folks in the city, by thinking about ways that we could leverage the resources that we have in the university, and the resources that our best resources are our students and our faculty, and how we could take that expertise and connect it to the community. And one way that we thought that this could be done was through the open data portal called the LA GeoHub. And I think everyone here knows about the LA GeoHub. And so the LA GeoHub provides lots and lots of information about the city, really critical things about our communities, things like trash pickup, things like, you could just name it. In fact, most of you probably know more about it than I do at this point. But all that data can say stuff about who we are and what our city is, and how we can best service the city in an equitable and fair manner. And so when we got together to think about an NSF grant proposal, we thought of some main things, like looking at the urban environment, like looking at social justice issues, the arts, all these different types of things, tree canopy, you name it. And what we wanted to do was connect our students, our faculty, the LA GeoHub through the mayor's office, and then nonprofits, and work with these nonprofits and work with the city to address some of their major initiatives. And because students and faculty have great ideas, this was the best format to actually link all of these different entities together. And we were so excited about the year one, and then year two, and year three. And now, because of COVID, we were granted a year four. And the year four allowed us to modify things a little bit. And it allowed us to begin to examine things that we didn't in years 1 through 3, and modify things, I think, for the better. We're in the process of applying for another grant that does similar things, but with our neighborhood councils. But what really linked all of these technologies together in a way that was accessible was ESRI's ArcGIS. And ArcGIS allowed students and faculty to map important data and then also to visualize this. Nothing is more impactful than seeing a map with colors and data on it. And I think that's why we originally thought that this would be a very empowering, a very impactful project, because from the very beginning, when we would put maps up and see these different colors, we realized that there was a lot of social justice issues involved in that. There were a lot of issues about how the city should distribute its resources in a more fair, equitable, and sustainable manner. And we also realized that those most impacted were the communities from which our students come. And so the big data project, as you can imagine how difficult it is to sort of harness all the energy from these different departments and entities and organizations, ultimately, I have come away from it feeling empowered myself. Not that I have been doing the great work that you have, like we're going to see tonight, but rather because we know we set something in place that will change people's lives. And I think that's what universities are all about, especially Cal State LA. We're about social change. We're about self-improvement. We're about community building. And I think in essence, that's what summarizes Cal State LA as a comprehensive university in perhaps the greatest place in all of the world, 6 miles from downtown LA. Now, I'm a San Francisco Giants fan, so I would say, hey, go Dodgers, but it's difficult for me to do that. But still, I understand LA Dodgers and seeing those hats around campus and around town really reflect and symbolize our connected energy. And much like this project, the energy that you brought to it is connecting all of us together. And to me, there's nothing better than that. So I won't talk forever because I probably could. I'd rather listen to you speak. I'd rather hear about the incredible projects you've been working on. And I hope that each and every one of you who presents, I hope you say something about how it's impacted you, right, personally. The projects are great in and of themselves, but ultimately it's the people behind the projects and how these things affect them that is very meaningful in the long run. And hopefully it's changed your life. It certainly has changed my life. And that's about all I have to say. So let me introduce a very important speaker, Canserina Kurnia. And she belongs in ESRI. And again, ESRI is that technological link that made all of this happen. And ArcGIS is an incredible skill to have, and you probably know this by now, that you can use in any field. I'm an archaeologist by training, and you can imagine ArcGIS is very important for my field. So Canserina, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Can I share my screen, please? I think somebody have to.
Yes, you can share now.
Gotcha.
Okay, let's see. Let me host disable participants screen sharing. Maybe you can give me as a co-presenter or co-host.
All right, or try again. I just
Okay.
Yeah, try again.
All right, I'll try again.
Thank you. So, yes, thank you. Yay. Okay.
Can you see
Yes,
my
ma'am.
screen? Okay. All right, let me just put one. All right. Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you to Dr. Dennis and her team to invite me as a guest lecturer to this event, Big Data Symposium, here at the California State University, Los Angeles. It is such an honor for me to be here. I've been following this project or this program since the beginning until today. It's 4 years already. It is a very impressive program that brings the education, the city, and the community partner together, and it is indeed an impactful collaborations. The topic that I bring today in this 10 minutes guest lecture is the importance of the big data and the impact on our community. And I think this is a good way to setting up the stage before we go to the student presentations. Now, because my background is a lot of technical, I bring a little bit more technical in here into my presentation. All right, so I would like to start with something simple. What is big data? And everybody here has the knowledge of the big data in certain level already. And when I Google the words, it's come up with billion results, which is indeed a big data already. I just choose one of the definitions. Big data refer to the data sets that are too large or too complex to deal with the traditional data processing application software. The data can be both structured and unstructured as well. And in most cases, when we deal with the big data or massive amount of data, we do not interested in individual feature or item, but more how to harness the data to reveal the patterns, trends, and associations. It is truly about the data mining in the big data, make sense of the large amount of data and find the information from that. And I always feel that it is fascinating to do that. Big data often described by these characteristics. Many of you probably learn about this, there's many V here, but this is really showing you how complex big data is. Knowing these characteristics will allow the data scientists to really derive more value from the big data and effectively articulating or communicating the important characteristics of the big data that they are dealing with. And taking some example for the big data, I think most of you, especially the younger generations, already know that big data, a lot of them come from the social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebooks. They are all inundating businesses and our life on the day-to-day basis. And many companies now are trying to harness and mining this data, especially for learning the customer behavior or people movement. Now I would like to bring you into the world of GIS. And the message I would like to bring here is in GIS, or GIS has been known to harness, visualize, and analyze large amount of data, big data that have spatial characteristic, okay, or spatial characteristic here. GIS technology is advancing rapidly, integrating and leveraging many innovations and dealing with data from variety of resources, format, and size. So GIS technology is indeed integrating with big data. And if we think about this, we know that GIS technology has been known to help solving real world problems, from responding to the epidemics, protecting biodiversity, building resilient communities, equities, handling the climate change, and many more, as we can see here on this slide. The data that we use to solve these real world issues are growing exponentially, creating larger and larger and more complex data that we have to compute. And that's big data. So we at GIS, we resolve the world problem using big data as well. GIS provide tools to visualize and analyze big data. I would like to bring a couple examples on this slide. Okay, this is a good one. We can map the data, the point data, such as the one that I have in this slide, showing the location of taxi pickup point and drop-off points in Manhattan, New York City. Millions of points on the map, but mapping the raw data only is meaningless. It's just a bunch of crowded points. But what we can do in GIS, we use the tools such as aggregate points to aggregate the data so we can see the pattern easier. Or we run the hotspot analysis so we can easily detect the hotspot location. Or we run the density analysis. So by using these GIS tools, we find interesting pattern or anomaly in the data that we would like to further investigate. GIS can help to make sense of the big data. One more thing here that I would like to bring it across to you is, if you see the tools that I listed in here, this is the tools that you all familiar with, or some of you familiar with: aggregate point, create buffer, extract data, calculate density. So the difference is the size of the data that the big data bring that we need to process. So we need the powerful parallel processing computation to run the similar tool, but for the big data. So the message for the students here is the tools that you learn today with relatively smaller size of the data will be applicable for the bigger size of the data as well. Another example here, creating suitability analysis over the entire United States. Many of us familiar with suitability analysis. You're using a bunch of raster data that many different layers to do that. But if you have to run it with 40 billion pixels, okay, that's really a huge, massive, large amount of data. Then we need the computation that's powerful enough to actually doing the computation that the traditional tool in one machine will not be able to run it. Okay? So we need infrastructure that designed for computing this big data, massive amount of data. I will touch this topic again a bit later. Now I would like to give a few example or review some of GIS application that dealing with the large amount of data. First of all, the real-time visualization and analysis. Today, there are so many sensors around us. Everything is detected, everything is captured. So creating data in motions or velocity is part of GIS. In GIS, we can map them. We can see how the object moving along. But not only that as well, we save those data for further analysis to reveal the trends and see the pattern. So storing the movement data like this can easily create big data. Another example of application that using big data is spatial data science, that mostly using solving the problem by learning from massive amount of data. Okay. So we do have tools and algorithms to do machine learning, predictive modeling, time series analytics, all that's related to big data analytics. So not only that, you're not only doing analysis, but also help to visualize the result on the map or using the chart, and also using modeling and scripting for the automation. So spatial data science is huge now. Another application that deals with the massive amount of data is imagery and remote sensing. Especially now, there are more and more remotely sensors available with better resolution, and in the emerging use of the drone imagery as well. So massive imagery data is not available. And GIS provide tools and capability to produce the imagery data, mosaicing them together, manage them, visualize, analyze, and disseminate all those imagery data. So this is an exciting application of the big data as well. The latest emerging integration of GIS related to the massive amounts of data is with the artificial intelligence, with machine learning and the deep learning. Now we can make sense of the massive imagery collections using the deep learning to perform object detection, classification, terrain analysis, or change detection on the global scale. The tools now available, you can do the deep learning in the desktop with ArcGIS Pro, or in the cloud with ArcGIS Online, or scale up with ArcGIS Enterprise. And also, if you like, you can integrate with the open science ecosystem using the notebook, Python, and R. So this is exciting newest technology. And as I mentioned earlier, we use many similar tools to deal with big data, but transform massively spatial data into meaningful information, we need the right infrastructure. So big data analytics need to be powered by distributed computing. In this, I just want to mention one of the upcoming product that we have is called ArcGIS GeoAnalytics on-demand engine. This is designed to perform spatial analysis for the big data. So it's leveraging the cloud environments like Amazon or Azure and Spark native technology. You can see how fast this one running as the parallel computation for quickly analyze large amounts of the spatial data. It's scalable, come with a tool, scriptable, And the result, you can use it anywhere. So a couple more slides, then I'm gonna be done. I just want this message is to be impactful. Big data needs to be turned into meaningful information. Then we also need to communicate them effectively in the way that easy to digest for the stakeholder, decision makers, and community at large. And I think that's what the Cal State's Los Angeles been doing. Okay. We can do this in a variety of ways, telling the story using story map, dashboard, or instant app that easily configure without coding necessary. And of course, using the hub, ArcGIS Hub or Geospatial Hub that you use in this project that provide two-way communications that communicate between the education, city or government, and community partner as well. With that, I'm gonna end my presentation with this slide that I took from our president, Jack Dangerman. Geospatial infrastructure is expanding rapidly to support millions of users, tens of millions of shared data sets, billions of maps, supporting a nervous system of sustainability. So with GIS, we deal with the big data, and our technology helps to make sense of the big data through the analysis and visualization across space and time. What you learn today will make impact for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Canserina. We so appreciate this knowledge that you gave our students. All right, so yes, send her some thanks, you guys. Give her a thumbs up, a heart. We really appreciate that.
Thank you
very much. All right, let's keep everything moving. I'd like to introduce our first course or a faculty member, Dr. Paul Narguzian. Is going to start us off with his students are going to show us, their story maps. So Paul, thank you.
Thank you, Don. Hi, everyone. My name is Paul Narguzian. I'm a professor of biological sciences here at Cal State Los Angeles. I must start off by saying I feel very fortunate to be teaching this special topics course for our department, which is entitled Science Education and Communication. One of the major objectives of this course is to examine how science is communicated more effectively by making science more meaningful. In other words, science is the search for evidence, while science education and communication is the search for meaning. Studies show that storytelling helps people to absorb, recall, and connect with new information. Many institutions now encourage scientists to use storytelling to communicate science. However, very few resources offer practical training on how to translate science into compelling stories. My students, most of whom are biologists, and they've heard me say this multiple times, I also explain to them that they're also historians of life on Earth. And so, keeping that in mind, the course approached their projects from a historical ecology perspective, utilizing objects such as specimens, collections, etc., located in various museums in Los Angeles County. Just as a short explanation, historical ecology content provides an opportunity to dive deeper into the flora, fauna, and culture of a specific region that often does not get shared with the general public. There is also a lack of educational resources that teach how to think on a large scale or geospatially. Of course, ArcGIS and story maps lend themselves extremely well as a visualization and communication tool to share and explain both the history and ecology, in this case, of the Los Angeles basin. The methodology that we used, each group first developed a framework within which the term historical, quote unquote, could be deployed with precision and specificity, and within which the sense of ecology, quote unquote, could be compared across different time periods. Historical needs to be unpacked along two major dimensions, natural and human. And the powerful interaction between the two needed to be understood before any chronology is possible. Likewise, for the term ecology, given that humans have densely occupied the Los Angeles region and exploited its natural resources for thousands of years, the term ecology must, for all practical purposes, always include a very large component of human contributions as well. As a result, each of the 4 groups were parsed into more meaningful and useful time periods, which they will showcase in their story map presentations. We'll start off with group 1, the California Ice Age, otherwise known as the Pleistocene. This includes era 1, about 2.6 million years ago to about 13,000 years before the present. The student members include Rex Yang, Jocelyn Alvarenga, Cynthia Yam, Carlos Asturias, and Victor Villegas. The second group will focus on the indigenous landscape era, which is from 9,000 years before the present to about 1769 of the current era. The student members include Natalia Bandek, Catalina Tran, Emily Bush Abaj, Kaylin Tang, Mary Budagian, and Matthew Salgado. The third group, the European American landscape, which includes the 1770s to about 1870s, include Jesus Garcia, Isabela Rodriguez Cardenas, Clarissa Guerra, Yesenia Quinto, Adriana Hurtado, Felicidad Perez, and Saida Abidi. And finally, the fourth and final group, which is their project is entitled The Urban Industrial Era, which includes the 1870s all the way up to the present. Student members include Alonso Melendez, Leah Patterson, Meryl Ann Mendoza, Rosa Marie Ordunia, Erin Min, and Alexa Navarro. And with that, I will hand over the Zoom platform to Montiel, who I understand will essentially be sharing the screens of each of these 4 projects in the sequence that I just gave. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. That was great.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll be starting to share the screen here with the presentations. So we're going to start with group 1, the Pleistocene era.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cynthia. I'm part of Group 1. We will be presenting on the Pleistocene today. The Pleistocene is better known as the Ice Age. During the Pleistocene, there lived megafauna, which are just basically giant animals. The Pleistocene is characterized by cold climates and the glaciation or ice sheets that connected North America and Eurasia, just seen a little below. Okay, our story map features a physical map in which you could explore where the items such as megafauna and stone tools were once found. Below the map, we have more about megafauna and other objects. Examples of megafauna would be the mammoth, the saber-toothed cat, and the American lion. I will now turn it over to Rex.
Hi, so my topic will be mainly focusing on the topic of giant short-faced bear. So giant short-faced bear was the tallest species. It has an omnivorous diet, but consumed mainly herbivores and could eat up to 35 pounds of meat per day. The giant short-faced bear disappeared around the end of the Pleistocene era and raised many speculations as to the real reason why it went extinct. So some suggested the migration of grizzly bear and black bear increased the competition and reduced the resource availability, and others hypothesized that the inability of giant short-faced bear to adapt to environmental change could also be a deadly factor. So there was one theory that was the most plausible, which is the reduction of giant short-faced bears hunting by the hominins, which lead to a drastic decline. So this is more plausible because black bear continue to live on to this day, and while giant short-faced bear distinct. And now I'll go and pass it on to Josie.
Traditionally, who belongs in our genus is defined as which specific traits are considered to be uniquely human and common to hominins. Common features we consider to be shared within the Homo genus is our upright posture, standing up straight and tall. Bipedalism, we walk in 2 feet, and manual dexterity, the ability to use our hands in a skillful way to make tools. With this, we can acknowledge that our ancestors were critical thinkers and hunters. This insight allows us to know who we belong with, and our immediate human family of Homo genus, an essential in continuance of hominins. Cynthia?
Thank you. So this feature of our project is basically a mini slideshow of what Paleolithic stone tools are and how they're made. So if we go down further to the slideshow, there's a nice little video of just how our ancestors once made stone tools that helped us obviously hunt and survive. So that's basically it. The end of the Pleistocene was marked by a catastrophic extinction event. There was a mass extinction of the megafauna and the climate change shift from a much warmer climate. It is speculated that the arrival of humans had a hand in the extinction of the megafauna due to overhunting. But the arrival of humans also marked the start of the Holocene, which we'll explore more with other presentations. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for doing that. Let's move on to the project number 2, but Cynthia and et al, this was great.
Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, I am Natalia and I will be presenting the Indigenous Landscape Era. Okay, that should be fine. So if we can scroll down, please. The first part of our presentation we have of our story map, we have the Los Angeles River. So the Los Angeles River supplied many villages with an abundance of water, including the Tonga village. The map shown below provides the villages laid out around Los Angeles River, while also including some of today's cities. So if you're native to LA, you know that the LA River still lives and thrives in the heart of LA. We also have oak trees. So we studied the oak trees in LA County. Oak trees have been used by many different indigenous tribes throughout history for several purposes. One of those tribes was the Chumash people. The Chumash people were known as one of the most talented tribes throughout America because of their culture and traditions. They had many artistic talents, from basket weaving to creating their own materials for fishing. They used many plants and trees around for several purposes, such as oak trees. And we have here a map of the oak trees that you can see in Santa Clarita, which is still part of LA County. We also have a section on the Yerba Santa. So the Yerba Santa plant species were used to create various household items. More significantly, it was used in the creation of different medicinal purposes. The map provides highlights of the critical habitats where the species can be found. With medical advances being consistently made every day, we believe a trip back in time to where roots in medicine began with the Chumash tribe and the use of Yerba Santa plant species. We can incorporate it more into today's world. And then I will leave it off to Emily, who will be presenting the rest of our story map.
All right, so moving on to lilacs. Lilacs are one of the many native plants that were used by civilizations in their daily lives, especially for medicine. The map shows some plant nurseries in the LA area that house lilacs. As civilizations grew, so did the uses of lilacs. These evolutionary uses of lilacs helped with the evolution of civilizations. One of the biggest impacts coming from the discovery of lilacs being a natural soap, as shown in the YouTube video. And then moving on to the acorn section. Acorns today can be seen as like any other common nut. However, during the indigenous era, they were heavily relied on and seen as highly nutritious. In order for the acorns to be consumed, they had to be processed, which required a lot of labor work, like turning them into flour and then leaching it to remove the high tannin acid content. The map shows a location where acorns are still foraged at and a location up north that shows where students are educated on the Chumash people and also the uses of acorns. And then moving on to fire, the use of fire was a crucial component for both the development of land and survival. Its use for the development of land was in prescribed fires, controlled fires done by careful preparations, which was used to achieve two main goals. The first goal was to increase grass and flower growth across maximum areas, and the second goal was to establish a type conversion, changing dry land into grasslands. Doing this brought many resources for animals and created edible plants. The other benefit of fire relied on the burning of firewood, which was used in cooking, heating, and sweat lodges. Careful planning of collecting firewood was done as a mean of not depleting all of the trees. And then the map shows prescribed fires in both dry and grass areas around LA and the LA regions. And this is the conclusion of our story map. Thank you.
Great job. Now we'll move to the second presentation, the European American landscape.
That was excellent, actually. I love it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Felicita Perez. I'm going to be presenting on our project, the European American Landscape. I think I should start off by saying that most of our group's background, just like as our professor said, is not in history. So it's, mainly in science. So it did take a lot of research to select the right object and connect it to Los Angeles, but overall, and also with the help of the GIS website, we managed to find more information than we had thought we could find. Our era consists of the year 1770s to the 1870s, which is like a really big timeline, and a lot of historic events took place during this time. We start off our era pretty strong with the Boston Massacre. We had to choose objects that not only took in consideration the European influence on America and specifically in LA, but also played a role in the development of the city of Los Angeles. The European influence that we decided to focus on was the rise of transportation, commerce, and just overall expansion. Our objects connect with one another. That's something that we took into consideration, that all of our objects, even though they were completely different, their history somehow connected. So our objects include like the vineyard wineries used by settlers that traveled on railroads. These wineries brought about people who were being introduced to agriculture for the first time. The rise of farmland equipment, just like the wagon and the hydraulic machine that are mentioned below, were beneficial to our era because without these objects, we actually wouldn't have a lot of the LA landmarks that we know now today, like Union Station or the San Gabriel Mission or the wildflower prairies on the San Fernando Valley. One thing that we did also try to focus on was not just a positive impact on LA, but negative impacts. I mean, that's really why we're here. It's just so we can find solutions to most of our LA, I would say LA problems. Some of the one negative impact that most of our objects had on LA was having landscapes erode and plants and animals being displaced, like the woodlands and the cattle that are also below. A lot of displacement happened around this era, which is also something that we really want to focus on our individual topics. It was fascinating to see how these common like objects have their own small history, because the more we know about our city's history, the more we are able to do about our city's present. Overall, it was a pretty tedious task, but with the observation of the maps on GeoHub, they had research that was within our reach within seconds. We were able to use most of this information to our advantage, and that was really the end goal here, to learn more about our city and display that information to people that, like all of us, were eager to learn and excited to explore like the new open data platform. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, excellent.
Good show. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the Dr. Narguzian's last group, the urban and industrial era.
So hello, my name is Meryl, and I'll be introducing our story map today, which entails the urban industrial era from the 1870s to the present. And this era is defined by the rapid modernization, and by tracking various markers across the time, we can learn more about how they define our natural world. So I'll start by talking about how drought has affected the citrus production in Southern California. And the citrus industry played a big factor in the urbanization of California during the late 1800s due to citrus produce bringing in new settlers, which brought in capital and infrastructural improvements. And in the middle figure here, you can see, and during the 1997, we can see that the most citrus producing countries are around like towards the middle of Southern California. And then in the left figure, we can see that area is like most affected by the drought. And with this, we can see from the right graph that California has fallen in citrus production in recent decades compared to other states such as Florida. And we're able to fix this by enforcing using water more sustainably. And by doing so, we can increase the production of citrus goods and crops, leading to an increase in farming jobs and revenue for the state. And I'll be passing it on the presentation to Leah, where she'll be talking about the mudflats.
Hello, my name is Leah Patterson, and my chapter is on how the biodiversity of the Cabrillo mudflats were affected by the creation of the Port of Long Beach. In 1542, Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo discovered the Bay of Smokes. San Pedro Bay was originally a shallow mudflat. The Port of Long Beach was founded on 800 acres of mudflats on June 24th, 1911, at the mouth of Los Angeles River. The Port of Los Angeles.org describes what Cabrillo saw as an excellent harbor as a desolate site that was little more than a swampy marshland. In 1985, as part of mitigation for the development of wetland areas, the Port of Los Angeles developed a 3.5-acre wetland in the north section of Inner Cabrillo Beach. The Port of Long Beach instituted programs to prevent and control oil spills, contain debris, and manage vessel traffic. They continued implementing programs and policies like the Green Port Policy and the Green Flag Incentive Program. However, the twin port of Los Angeles and Long Beach are together the single largest source of air pollution in the metropolitan Los Angeles area. And I will be passing this along to my peer mate, Alexa.
Alexia, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Okay, how's it now?
That is fabulous. Thank you.
Okay. So my section of the project is on the history of freeways in Los Angeles. And if anyone knows, the first freeway was built in Los Angeles. It's the 110 freeway. And regarding the history of freeways, I think it's important for us to know that it came at a cost that wasn't just of monetary value. A lot of immigrant background communities were relocated because their homes were removed for construction. At one point, there was actually a plan to expand the 710 near Cal State LA, and I actually have a coworker whose home is owned by Caltrans in that area. But luckily, the construction won't be taking place after all. As we all know, also LA County has horrible air quality, and a lot of that is due to an increase in vehicle traffic and particulate matter due to the emissions that cars release into the air. So the map right there shows a few hotspots of high concentrations of particulate matter along the freeways in LA County. So overall, just some things to be conscious of when looking at the urbanization of LA County and freeways, because they're such a big part of Los Angeles. Okay, I'll be passing it off to Erin now.
Hi, everyone. So Los Angeles is not just the only city in the world that's experiencing severe climate change. Intensifying wildfires are really affecting endemic hummingbird populations in Los Angeles, California. Climate change is causing desertification, and we're seeing hotter days, hotter temperatures, ice caps are melting, and our biodiversity is being affected. So if we look at this map, we see hotspots where there's fire-prone areas and fires in just the past 7 days. Hummingbirds are either transient or can be found year-round. And this map shows that these little green areas, it's where a high amount of biodiversity of hummingbirds can be found. So Anna's hummingbirds and Ellen's hummingbirds are the most common hummingbirds in Los Angeles. Both feed on the similar plants and insects. They prefer like oak woodland, chaparral, coastal pine, and shrub habitats. So Los Angeles is perfect. Fire, human development, and destruction of these habitats has posed a huge threat to these species. These are keystone species. They're really important for pollination. So naturally, if we have a lot of wildfires that happen because we're suppressing it in areas where there's urbanization. It's making it, giving it conditions to burn at a more intense rate and level and for longer. So we're seeing that, 2 years following a fire, populations of hummingbirds are severely declining, and they're fluctuating throughout the year when it's not historically seen. So we're seeing these hummingbirds are being deeply affected by climate change. I'll give it to the next member.
Hi, going along with the theme of animals in Los Angeles, the common carp has made the LA River its home. And so the carps were introduced to California around 1872, right around the start of the urban industrial era. And since then they have still remained within the LA River. They have experienced, their populations have experienced ups and downs. As we see there, the LA River underwent reconstruction where all of its walls were covered by concrete. And despite these changes, it is quite remarkable that the carps have survived those drastic changes, and they are still in the LA River today. Some people fish them recreationally, including some unhoused residents of LA use it as a food source, use these fish as a food source. And you can even see there in one of the pictures, there's Jimmy Kimmel being shown around these fish. So the LA River has been quite an important place for biodiversity to keep thriving, including the LA carp and other non-native fish. We'll move on to the next person.
All right, so my topic is on how DDT affects eggshells. So DDT was a pesticide created in 1874 and was heavily used in California throughout the 19th century. It was effective on keeping the insects out, but it sadly found a way into water sources through runoff. So this resulted in birds in the LA area that were consuming the fish in these water sources to consume DDT indirectly. And as they took in DDT, it caused their eggshells to become more brittle. So those were some images of how brittle eggshells look. And this caused a decline in some birds populations, such as the pelicans here in the LA area. And then, in the next image, we have a map that shows an area where 500,000 barrels of DDT were actually allowed to be dumped in the Pacific Ocean, right outside LA. And then here's a video just comparing a normal egg to one that's been affected with DDT. And the last section here is the time span of DDT and how long it could actually stay within the environment. So DDT was banned in the late 19th century, although because it can stay in the environment for so long, it still has an effect on the population, although they're going up from back then. And thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for that. It was very informative.
Thank you so much. Dr. Nargouzi and your students are excellent work. Let's give them a little round of applause and support their efforts. Their final projects will be available to the public, in May after the end of the class and everything. I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Dr. Choi Chatterjee, and her student Sania. They're going to talk about the urban ecological garden, the indigenous garden at Cal State LA. Excuse me, Dr. Chatterjee, for that. So let's welcome them, and we're going to keep this moving. So thank you, Paul, so much again. Great start.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I want to thank Dr. Dennis and Dr. Bodo Creed for inviting us. And I have a little bit of a confession to make. And of course, a big thank you to Dean Villanowitz. I'm not a big data person. I'm here under false pretenses. I came in through the back door, but luckily I have a student who understands how to do this. And so it was fantastic working with Sanya and learning from her. And so our presentation works very well with what has already been presented. And this was scientists doing history. And I will show you what historians do with the history of natural science. So there are two projects that is going on at this time. One is we have a grant from USDA. The PI is Dr. Barry Hibbs from Geosciences, who invited me to be a part of his grant, Dr. Alexander Wright in biology, and Dr. Mandy Hillstrom from food sciences. So we got this grant 2 years ago, and part of the grant was building an urban food garden on campus. And my part of the grant was building a database of climate adapted agriculture in Los Angeles, which, believe or not, does not exist given our deep agricultural past. Trying to go to the next slide. So what we are doing is twofold. And this is part of building a bridge with the community, because what we are researching, we are trying to then plant in the garden. And ultimately, both our database and the plant collection will be shared with the community. As you know, there's been a lot of interest during COVID, interest in growing food. We have a very long tradition of homesteading in Los Angeles, and this is a dream that was pursued by people of all races of how to grow your own food and achieve some kind of self-sufficiency. But now urban agriculture also can be an important fight to raise biodiversity. I won't talk about climate change because I'm very uncomfortable. We just saw that we came out of the ice age 13,000 years ago. I think we tossed that term around a little too easily. I'm much more comfortable talking about biodiversity, which as a human species is part of our duty to also not just maintain, but to grow, so that human flourishing only happens in concert with flourishing of other species. So biodiversity is something that I can wrap my head around. Now, what we do with this catalog, and some of my other students is working on this, not Sanya, Chris Gorola and Esmeralda Del Rio, that we are starting not with the archaeological record that Dr. Nargisian's students started with. We are starting with the written record, which as historians, we are much more comfortable with. So we're starting in the 18th century with the travelogues of the Spanish travelers. And what we are doing is, and this is, I liked our guest speaker talked about analyzing data, because big data, you depend on the machines to see the patterns in your data. What historians do, sometimes we will spend a month puzzling over 10, 20, 30-page document, trying to understand what that document is. And what we are beginning to realize, we are reading through these travelogues. We get together every Monday. We spend 3 hours together. Each of us reads a different travelogue. And what we are realizing is when the Spanish were taking notes, they didn't really always understand what notes they were taking. Also, there was a lot of misunderstanding about the indigenous peoples, the foods that they were eating. And of course, in those days, food was medicine. So part of it is cross-checking multiple references, then going back to the USDA plant database, which also isn't fantastic on indigenous plants. And what we are doing is we have these two basic categories, both food and medicine. And so the first group talked about acorns, but acorns was a very small part of the picture. By our count, the indigenous peoples might have been using 3,500 different plants, which is a mind-boggling amount for us to even think about. And my group and I in this first year, we think if we get to 100, if we can identify 100, then we are doing well. I'll show you a little bit of my small data project. So we are literally working with an Excel sheet that the three of us have access to. I had two other graduate students the previous year. And so what we are doing is we are literally, any plant that is mentioned multiple times and more than 3 sources makes it to our list. So we we list it, then we go to the USDA plant database and find the botanical reference. And then what we are doing is we are finding the multiple uses of the plant, because what is very interesting is the indigenous people came up with many ways of not just storing plants, but also there were some property rights that were associated with plants. So there were bands of Indians, for example, who owned a grove of, say, pine trees, right? And it could be the Torrey pine, it could be the foothill pine, but pine trees produce this incredible amount of food. An indigenous person could consume up to 1,200 pounds of pine nuts. So we now know that some of the stands of pines in the San Jacinto Mountains were intensively farmed by certain groups of indigenous people. And then different groups use these pine nuts differently. Some fermented it, some ground it into flour, some twisted it on twine and laid it out so people passing by could pluck off it. So part of the Spanish problem was when they came, they saw a landscape that was not edible to them. So when their stores were running low, as it did, as they went from, Baja to Alta California, they were relying on indigenous people, not only for food supplies, but for teaching them how to use that landscape. So reading the landscape was a big part of it. And there was this huge knowledge transfer that took place that we are really beginning to understand at a very basic level. So I will end and hand this over to Sanya, but I just want to invite you to come down to our Cal State LA Urban Garden. And what we are doing is we are planting some plants that, for example, sweet potato was found by the Aztecs in Mexico. It didn't make it to California till much later. Sweet wormwood used all across Eurasia. It's a key fight against COVID. Longevity spinach. This is something that also comes from Asia. So we are being eclectic in the garden, and we are planting climate adapted plants, things that will thrive in the climate of Los Angeles. And if I have time, I might come back to the slide on what urban regenerative agriculture can do in terms of increasing biodiversity, population health, soil health, and the history of this. And many of it really completely pioneered by communities of color who had no resources, no backing, no help, but used their ingenuity. But I'm going to hand it off to Sanya, because she has a presentation that's really relevant to this particular gathering. So Sanya, I will move the slides for you, unless, can you do it? Sanya?
You're muted, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I can pull it up and as well. Give me just a moment.
Yeah. Unless you want me to do it for you, I can do it for you. Should I stop share? Do you want to pull it up?
Or actually, Dr. Chatterjee, it's not pulling up right now, just connectivity issue. So do you mind just changing it for me?
No, just tell me what to do. Should I go to the next slide?
No, we can stay right here for a second. So hello, everyone. My name is Sanya Shahid. I am a master's student with the Department of History. And before we begin, I just wanted to thank Dr. Chatterjee, as well as everyone with the Big Data Project for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. So let's just get into our discussion on green spaces in LA. Dr. Chatterjee, if you could go to the next slide. So really what started my interest in this project is that my parents are actually homeowners in Sacramento, but I spent most of my life renting houses, or they spent most of my life renting houses. And the very first house that we ever rented had this beautiful backyard. It was so large, so green. And I remember spending significant parts of my childhood outside, looking at the ants, ladybugs, bees in the backyard, looking at the grass, playing in the grass. But the most interesting part of that yard were the several trees that outlined the entire yard. There were fruit trees, but there was also this one particular tree that just there's just this one particular tree that just had these interesting hot pink flowers that I had never seen before, and I actually have not seen since. And that was what I considered my tree. I used to do my homework under it, read a book under it. At one point, my brother, sister, and I, we had some pet fish that died, and instead of flushing them down the toilet, we decided to bury them under that tree. But even more significantly, we had, you know, several fruit trees. We had 3 cherry trees, 3 orange trees, and a pomegranate tree. And whenever the fruits were ripe, we would go and pick them. And especially with the pomegranate trees, my entire family would sit around and peel the pomegranate together. So I mentioned this because as of October 2021, so just a few short months ago, the United Nations has officially recognized access to nature as being a fundamental human right. And this has been going on for a little bit longer, but various people have acknowledged that there is something called a nature deficit disorder, where if human beings, and in particular children, don't spend enough time in nature, don't have access to nature, they start to develop some behavioral problems. And when Dr. Chatterjee came to me with this project, I was really interested to get started on it and kind of address some of the inequalities that we see when it comes to access to nature, especially in our own communities. So Dr. Chatterjee, if we could go to the next slide. So the major goals of our project are to see who has access to green spaces within a 10-mile radius of the Cal State LA campus. And in this case, green space refers to gardens, it refers to parks, and it even refers to just general tree coverage, tree density. And then we also want to see who has access to community gardens, farmers markets, and grocery stores that sell fresh and healthy produce. Yes, so how do we do this? So Dr. Chatterjee, the way that we've been looking at it so far is to find these data sets that are actually available to the public online. So the first one that you see, the CalFresh SNAP authorized farmers markets, is a data set provided by LA County. It's a little outdated, as you can see, it's from 2015. But it has all the information we really need to map out where these farmers markets are. And the formatting of it is correct for us to be able to upload it directly to ArcGIS and not really deal with the data as much. The other image you're seeing is a map, and this is a map provided by the Los Angeles Community Garden Council. And the Los Angeles Community Garden Council is an organization that is trying to strengthen communities by building and supporting community gardens and providing access to fresh produce. And that's something that Dr. Chatterjee and I discussed as well. There's an abundance of information that universities in particular research and gain regarding inequalities, and especially inequality regarding access to resources, but there's little implementation on ways to combat these inequalities. And that's something that the LACGC and Dr. Chatterjee's Urban Garden are kind of working on, is implementing some a method to kind of lessen these sort of inequalities. And so obviously with the map as it is, that's not really a data set that we can import into our own map. So in order to do this, we had to take an extra step, Dr. Chatterjee, if you will, and we had to go over every individual point on this map and then create our own document on Excel or Google Sheets that has that key information, a name and an address that we can map. And what you end up getting is a map that looks something like our next slide, Dr. Chatterjee. Dun, dun, dun. So this is a map of essentially LA County and the 3 points that we've identified so far. So as you can see, the black point is Cal State LA, and we have blue farmers markets, orange community gardens that are open to the public, and green community gardens, those that are working directly with the LACGC. And so automatically you can kind of see that there's more of these green spaces kind of in the center, I'd say, of the county, or especially around the city of Los Angeles, and less on the periphery. But when we get a little bit closer, Dr. Chatterjee, if you will, we get to about, this is a around 12-mile radius around campus. And you can see that around Cal State LA, there really isn't a lot of these green spaces. Although there are some, that's not to, of course, mean that these are accessible to much of the Cal State LA community, especially when you consider other factors such as LA traffic, whether or not members of our communities have cars, whether or not we can use public transport, and something that's incredibly relevant right now, the price of gas. These kind of things make, going to literally even the closest point to our campus routinely incredibly difficult and even inaccessible to many within our community. And then when you compare that to a more affluent community, Dr. Chatterjee, like Santa Monica, this is the same square mileage. You can see there's a really close number of data points in both maps. There's actually 19 points around Cal State LA and 23 around Santa Monica, which is especially startling considering if you look at the map, there's, I'd say about like a third of it is the ocean. So we're seeing a lot more of these green spaces in a more affluent community. And so Dr. Chatterjee, if you'll go. So we're really early, we're in the early stages of this project. Dr. Chatterjee and I plan to continue this next semester and hopefully beyond that as well. And so we've identified some of our next steps and things to look at. So we want to look at grocery stores, large chains that you're probably used to shopping at, Ralph's, Vons, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's. And we know that, the quality of produce can vary depending on grocery store. You're not going to get the same quality at Whole Foods as grocery outlet, bargain market. So maybe we want to note, where are these specific grocery stores? How close are they to Cal State LA? How are they compared to affluent neighborhoods? And then next we want to look at ethnic markets. So Mexican markets, Chinese markets, Indian, Arab markets. These places often have fresh produce. Some of it is imported, much of it is grown nearby. And especially when you consider the rising influence on, of immigrant communities and immigrant cuisine on larger American cuisine, we're seeing more people should be able to have access to these ethnic markets where produce tends to be a little bit cheaper than at a large grocery store, but tends to be around the same quality, if not better. And then finally, we also want to take a look at tree density and tree coverage in affluent areas versus, inner city areas, and especially around our campus, and see, how many trees are we finding per, square mile? What kind of coverage are we seeing? So yeah, thank you so much for listening. And that is all I have prepared for you.
Thank you so much. Let's celebrate that. This is excellent, and it does support our urban ecology emerging center too. So thank you so much, Dr. Chatterjee and Sonia. I would like to introduce our next course, our faculty member, Dr. Michelle Bluise, and her students that will be presenting. So let's give them some space for that.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Michelle Blurs. I'm in the Department of Anthropology, and this course is Project Design in Anthropology. And the theme for this semester was community health from a human biology perspective. And students designed their own projects. They picked their own projects as long as it was in the theme of community health. So I'll just briefly summarize the overarching goals for the projects, and then I will introduce the projects and then let the students take it from there. So what the students were to accomplish, what their projects were to accomplish, is to increase public awareness and understanding of the health detriments in LA County. They examined LA County Department of Health data. Their projects are also to encourage communities to attain high quality, longer lives, free of preventable disease, disability, injury, and especially premature death. As is commonly known, longevity is very different in different groups in our country. Another goal of the student projects was to help Los Angeles County achieve health equity and minimize, or better yet, eliminate health disparities and improve the health of all groups. To provide recommendations to create social and physical environments that promote good health for all communities. And finally, to promote quality of life, healthy development, which starts in utero, and healthy behaviors and choices across all life stages. So each of the projects that the students designed hit each of those goals. So the 4 projects that we have today, the first one is Beyond the Brush and Floss by Jaywan An and Demi Bravo Diaz. These are 2 anthropology students that want to go into dental school, so this is an appropriate project for them. The second project is Colon Cancer and Preventative Measures by Juan Carlos Iguereta and Sarili Uribe. Colon cancer is one of the most, it's a cancer that's actually increasing in frequency, especially in younger people and especially in the Latina community. The third project is Mental Health Between White and Hispanic Populations. This is a project by Yuban An, Kelly Carpenter, Emily Rivera, and Lila Yang. And our fourth project is Healthcare Access for African Americans by Cairo Harrell, Janine Mancia, and Curtis Smith. And I will leave it there and let the students take it.
Oh, sorry, I was mute. Yeah, I meant to say a thank you for that wonderful introduction, and now we're going to move on to the first group, Beyond the Brush and Floss.
Thank you, Montiel. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Montiel, and thank you, Dr. Blurs. Hello, everyone. I'm Demi Bravo, and our project title is Beyond the Brush and Floss. So oral health has long been an overlooked part of an individual's well-being, and for many, it may come as a surprise to learn that there are direct links between the mouth and the rest of the body. So protecting your oral health means a proper dental hygiene routine and regular dental exams. But how can people seek and receive such checkups when there are various factors that prevent them from accessing dental care? And I'll go ahead and pass it on to Jaywan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jaywan. I'm going to talk about the variables studied. In our project, we wanted to make known that there are factors that prevent individuals from seeking dental care, accessibility being one of those factors. We wanted to compare communities surrounding Cal State LA, and so we chose Glendale, Alhambra, East LA, and West Hollywood. For our project, we first looked at the percentage of children who sought dental care in these communities. There were several variables that were studied for the purposes of this project: percentage of population living under the federal poverty line, transportation available in the city, number of dental clinics, median household income, the earliest time a clinic opens, the latest time a clinic closes, total population, and percentage of population that are in the age range of 0 to 17 years old are provided to serve as a context. As for the results show that despite West Hollywood having the lowest population and having that lowest percentage of children in the population, it had the highest percentage of children who are unable to afford quality dental care in the past 12 months, it being 20%. This is shocking, as West Hollywood has much going for it. It has the highest median income out of all the 4 cities. The time the clinic closes and opens are extremely similar to other cities. The transportations available are also extremely similar. There are quite a number of dental clinics. What this shows is that there are some other factors that is influencing the West Hollywood children's ability to access quality dental care. Some factors may be dental literacy issues, language or cultural barriers, or negative experiences that make children unwilling to visit the dentist. For the conclusion, I'll pass it over to Demi again.
So unfortunately, oral health continues to not receive the attention it deserves. In the beginning, one of our project goals was to encourage state and local governments to launch initiatives aiming to improve oral health inequalities. as well as promote the connection between dental and our overall health. So to provide some recommendations, we have suggested that toothbrushing programs should be given in elementary schools. And so at an early age, students will be taught the importance and the steps to maintain good oral health. The lack of access and the costly dental treatments will only continue to affect many more children, specifically those in low resource communities. So in the attempt to combat this, we had recommended that funding is provided for mobile dental clinics where exam screenings and teeth cleanings are free of charge. So overall, our message is it's necessary that governments as well as dental and health practitioners and academics help push large-scale changes and have oral health on the global and public health agenda. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for that presentation. Now we'll be moving to the next group, which is healthcare access for African Americans.
Our project focuses, Montel, if you can just scroll down really softly and then stop at figure 1.
Okay.
Our project focuses on the mistrust that African Americans have towards the healthcare system and the factors that further contribute to the point of view. Racism is the rooted issue that quickly branched out to many privileges that America has to offer, like money, housing, medical support, transportation, education, maternal care, overall health care, and mental health. As we studied these factors, we realized that we had to not only look at racism, but these other influences that decide if racism is the only issue or if there are other added stressors. We selected Windsor Hills and Westmount for our project because we wanted to see if socioeconomic status, or SES, played a part in how Black African Americans feel about the healthcare system and if they feel safe going to receive healthcare. If you can scroll down to the slideshow. Oh, well, all of our maps here, figure 3 shows the libraries, one of our community outreach. If you can scroll over to the left, you can see the libraries available and how often that they're open. And then at the slideshow, you can just keep scrolling through the slideshow until you reach the timeline. We selected Windsor Hills and Westmount for our project because we wanted to see if, how much does money play a role? As of 2019, Windsor Hills, a high SES city, Black residents have a median income of $90,000. In absolute numbers, 756 or 8.3% of Black residents are in poverty. Overall residents in Windsor Hills have 9.1% poverty rate in Westmount. In Westmount, a low SES city, Black residents have a median income of $33,722. In absolute numbers, 3,865 Black residents are in poverty. That is 27.4%. Overall residents in Westmount have a 26.6 poverty rate. Does medical support make a difference in how Black and African Americans feel about their healthcare system? In Windsor Hills, our high SES city, 97.9% of the population has healthcare coverage. In Westmount, our low SES city, only 32% of adults are uninsured, with 31% of adults have reported difficulty accessing healthcare. In 2017, Westmount experienced the highest amount of healthcare professional shortage within the area. As we're looking at the timeline now, this is the history of unethical medical practices. And Montel, you're just gonna scroll and then you can stop at the open-ended question. These events show how these events can contribute to the lack of trust that is felt and further delay Black and African Americans to find better healthcare. Transportation to these facilities, how safe people feel walking in their neighborhood, going outside for fresh air are qualities that everyone should have living in America, because these factors further contribute to having rich or poor life expectancy. Windsor Hills has a life expectancy of 75.6%, and Westmount has a life expectancy of 76.6%, compared to the LA County average of 82.3%. We concluded that racism is a factor, but without financial stability, and these environmental factors can determine who and how we can receive access. I wanted to leave this open-ended question for everyone to think about, because it has come to the point where we have to consider if we do need our own personal health care, or if we should contribute to other races within the area. And you can continue to scroll down, Montel, through the resources and just continue to slow down. How can we fix this? By acknowledging that it is happening, acknowledging everything in context, and work to change the dialogue we have when we think of Black and African Americans, and change the practice that we are taught in medical communities. And that's the end of our project.
Thank you. That was a very insightful presentation. So now we're going to shift to the next group, which is colon cancer and preventative measures.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sari Uribe, and my partner is Juan Carlos Higarera. Our project is colon cancer, and we're focusing on colon cancer and Latinx individuals within East Los Angeles, and intend on spreading awareness to members of the community, along with providing preventative measures. So for our first point is colon cancer and their signs. So according to the American Cancer Association, cancer is the leading cause of death among Hispanic people, accounting for 20% of death. Colon cancer, also known as colorectal cancer, is a type of cancer that affects the colon and the rectum. This develops by having a flare-up of polyps in the lining of the colon. Polyps are small clumps of cells that are situated within the lining of the colon and the rectum. When polyps go undetected or untreated, this causes a spread of cancer within the walls and many layers of the colon. The CDC advises people ages 45 to 75 to get screened. However, people with a family history of cancer or colon cancer should consider getting screened at a younger age. So the preventatives and testing, we wanted to bring awareness to testing and methods of preventing colon cancer. We listed tests that are necessary to, for you to go to the doctor's office, such as colonoscopies, sigmoidoscopies, and CT colonoscopies, including the years that the test should be taken again. Most of these range from 5 to 10 years. Bringing awareness on testing options that can be done at home is important, because not everyone has the time to prepare for these kind of tests that you have to go in for. So stool testing is another option, and we have 3 types of stool tests that can be taken. So you can do these in the comfort of your own home, and the sample is taken back to the labs, and it should be done more often, so about once a year, and all the tests have their pros and cons and should be discussed with your doctor to see what your best options are. So we also created a video in Spanish. Because East Los Angeles has a 97% Latinx population, a little over half of East Los Angeles has an education level below high school, and a quarter of East LA also struggles with English proficiency. Knowing that the target audience for this information are the Latinx community members who might struggle with English, we created a video in Spanish with the help of Martin Marquez from Cal State LA and Valeria Rodillo of Lone Star College to make the information about colon cancer and the preventative measures more accessible. Below the video, we have provided links for more information about colon cancer in both English and Spanish, and the video is also captioned in Spanish. So for our first map, we show the percentage of colon cancer showing in the pink are the lower numbers, like East Los Angeles showing 55% of people getting screened in comparison to areas such as Downey, showing in the hotter pink 88% getting screened for colon cancer. The map also shows the green dots that are facilities to get tested and screened. Within areas such as East Los Angeles, there are more locations, but fewer people getting tested and screened in comparison to Downey, fewer places, but more testing getting done. I'm gonna pass it over to Juan.
Our second map relates to healthcare access, as it shows the percentages of insured people in Los Angeles. As shown by the dark red, East Los Angeles has a high uninsured rate, going above 35% of its population being uninsured. Going off the second map, we know that above 35% of East Los Angeles go uninsured. However, the uninsured percentage of East LA is actually 43%. That figure was obtained by the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. A factor that can contribute to there being such a high uninsured percentage can be how East Los Angeles households are of low socioeconomic status, as 26% of East Los Angeles are below the federal poverty line, and 66% of the community are below 200% of the federal poverty line. Even while people are struggling financially, they should be made aware of possible accessible forms of healthcare, such as Medicaid and Medicare. The Affordable Care Act allowed for healthcare to be more accessible to low-income families. And here in California, we are seeing steps for accessible healthcare for undocumented families as well. The Affordable Care Act requires Medicare and private insurers to cover the cost of colon cancer screening tests. However, there still might be some form of facility/physician fee attached to the visit. And circling back to our first map, the colon cancer screening percentages for East Los Angeles are at 55%, which are the lower end of the spectrum when we look at the rest of Los Angeles. And understanding the healthcare access is closely related to insurance, as it's detailed, sorry, Montiel, can you go a little lower? As there is a large uninsured percentage of Latinos in East LA. I'm gonna have Sarah Lee close us off.
So our conclusion is we wanted to make sure people are able to understand the dangers of colon cancer and it going unchecked, especially within the Latinx community, not only by showing the mortality rates and the rates of people getting colon cancer and just them getting screened, but also giving a solution that testing is a really good option and having people understand that a lot of people can be uncomfortable with certain types of testing, but there are different options for you to take. And with the usage of the map, we also wanted to point out available locations and areas where testing is available and seeking help for people that are uninsured and are unsure of how to get tested. And that's it.
Thank you, that was well articulated. Now we're gonna move on to our last group here for this class, which is mental health between white and Hispanic populations.
Hello, my name is Yuben and I will be presenting our mental health between white and Hispanic population. So our project is about comparing mental health between two cities of different racial and socioeconomic statuses. So we introduce by starting off with what really is considered mental health. Mental health is our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and behave in our lives. So does this mean that everyone has mental health? Which is yes, everyone does. There are several factors that can affect our mental health. So we focus on whether there was cultural stigmatization surrounding mental health and how education, socioeconomic status, and environmental factors affect our mental health. We decided to compare between Beverly Hills, a high socioeconomic and predominantly white city, and East Los Angeles, a low socioeconomic and predominantly Hispanic city. So what we found was that Beverly Hills has a higher depression and suicide rate in adults than East Los Angeles. Keep in mind that you have to go further down. Sorry.
No worries.
Sorry about that. So yeah. So keep in mind that these statistics that we found are from those who are clinically diagnosed. We found that there is negative stigmatization of mental health in Hispanic communities. Oh, we have to go further down. Sorry.
You got it.
So we also found that education is essential in reducing stigma toward mental health, especially during childhood. And there is no official mental health education in schools in both cities, even though physical education is a thing, but mental health education isn't. Language barrier is also an issue. As you can see in East Los Angeles, there is a lower proficient English speaking community compared to Beverly Hills. We also found that socioeconomic status also affects whether people can afford mental health care, where East Los Angeles has more people below the federal poverty line and also has a much lower median household income. There are also more uninsured people in East LA, and all these factors might contribute to fewer people seeking professional help, therefore being excluded from these data. And then for our final research, we found that environmental factors such as substance abuse are also critical to mental health. These include alcohol and drug abuse, which affects us biologically and put us at a higher risk for mental health disease. So we found that Beverly Hills actually has a higher substance abuse rate, which might contribute to the reason why Beverly Hills has such a high suicide and depression rate compared to East LA. And then easy access to mental health care centers are also important. But as you can see in the maps, Beverly Hills doesn't have as many easily accessible mental health care options compared to East Los Angeles. So from our research, we included outreach workshops and mental health care access and resources that offer services in Spanish and English in East LA. And we also included centers in Beverly Hills and actions that people can take to improve their mental health, that if they can't afford to go to actual mental health care centers for professional help. Yeah, you have to keep scrolling down. Yeah, see, these are all the resources that we found. And then that was the alternate method for mental health. In conclusion, so mental health can affect anyone since there are so many outside factors that can affect our mental health, regardless of socioeconomic and racial status. So what we wanted to do is to raise awareness of mental health by providing mental health courses in high school, since it is essential in childhood, provide assistance for those who can't afford or can't access mental health care, build community trust between the people and the professionals, especially between minorities and professionals. And we wanted to break the negative stigma towards getting help for mental health. So yeah, mental health can affect anyone. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Fantastic, interesting results. And thank you for that presentation. It was well presented. So now we're gonna open up the floor for Dr. Nuno to introduce his class.
Hello, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon. My class is a graduate seminar on the sociology of urban life, and the unifying theme for our course was the topic of gentrification. And we sought to explore Los Angeles using a quantitative approach in the way that qualitative sociologists traditionally explore the city. So we know that the city is Los Angeles is huge. It's a very, very large megalopolis. And we wanted to construct detailed analyses of the different neighborhoods that make up the city of Los Angeles. A criticism of gentrification studies is that qualitative scholars will present gentrification in the Lower East Side of Manhattan as if that is a description of all of Manhattan, or gentrification of certain neighborhoods in Portland as if that is all of the city of Portland. And I wanted us to avoid that approach and contain our analyses within very specific neighborhoods. So there were 14 students enrolled in the course. Every student selected a very specific neighborhood. All the neighborhoods are north, west, and south of downtown Los Angeles. I think there was one student who looked at neighborhoods in the northeastern section of Los Angeles. And the individual case studies were to explore the types of demographic and sociological changes that had gone on in these neighborhoods over the last 10 to 15 years. Students did outstanding work. I had a very difficult challenge selecting just a small cohort of students to showcase for this big data symposium. So I asked a few students to collaborate. So there are a couple collaborative projects that their neighborhoods are kind of close geographically, close to one another. So they'll be sharing story maps, very interesting story maps about neighborhoods north of downtown LA, just a little west of downtown LA, and a couple neighborhoods south of downtown LA. And I want to turn it over to our presenters who are going to share with us their interesting work on the different neighborhoods that make up the city of Los Angeles.
All right, thank you, Dr. Nuno, for that introduction. Now we'll go ahead and get started with the first group, which is Lamarck Park, Crenshaw, Baldwin Hills, the Black, Beverly Hills.
Hello, that is mine. My name is Catherine Eason. This will be my 4th semester at Cal State LA. The neighborhood I was focused on was the zip code 9008, which covers the Leimert Park, Crenshaw, and Baldwin Hills area, which I myself am a part of. Within this presentation, I plan on discussing the Black influence within this area and how this area has not only created a positive impact on the Black community, but also provides a safe space for people of color to grow and develop. I'm gonna pause right here. So first we're seeing how the demographic of Leimert Park area. To the left, you'll see the blue dots. That's going to identify the racial demographic of the white influence in the area versus the Black influence in the area in 2019. And then if we scroll down a bit more, we're going to see the incoming Hispanic influence in the area. Originally, this area was founded in 1927 by Walter H. Leimert, and it was restricted to white inhabitants in 1948. The Black migration didn't start until the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and it became an oasis of Black cultural expression. A bit more, if we scroll a bit down more, you can see how it is identified as the Black Beverly Hills. It's one of the most influential areas on this side of Los Angeles. Also, it holds a lot of cultural and historical representation. If go up a little bit more to the protest, there you go. Here you can see it's also used as a platform for political and social movements. To the left, you can see, if you go to the 1950s, yes. To the left, you can see that it's going to be the equity protests of the 1950s. And then to the right, contrasting, you can see the 2019 equity and equality protests within the same area. Then scrolling back down a little bit further, you can see some of the historical Black-owned businesses that have been a part of the neighborhood. We have Barry's Blues nightclub, Museum in Black in 1990, Babes and Ricky's Blues Club, Pan-African People's Orchestra musician. And then here is a map of all the Black-owned businesses within that area. From restaurants, from food, sporting, and then to the right, you have a couple of the photos of the Black-owned businesses in the area. And then if we're going further to the next map, I find that it's quite interesting. So as we see at the beginning, we have the demographic of Black versus white in the area. Now, if we go into our demographic and we see what's labeled as best areas, desirable and declining, the inhabited areas that are labeled as declining and hazardous are inhabited most by Black individuals. But even though those areas are labeled as declining and hazardous, if you scroll a little bit down, I have provided pictures of those areas that are deemed hazardous and declining. Don't look very much hazardous or declining at all. The Don Miguel Drive, the Don areas, Don Felipe, all of these are known for their Black stars. The filming of Insecure, a lot of TV shows, films, there's so much inhabitants within that one area. A lot of movies, it's a lot of Black recycled dollars within that area. And then in conclusion to this, overall, I just wanted to stress the importance of a community of color within itself, and how that a community being represented within itself actually helps the growth of development of the inhabitants within it. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. That was well organized and presented.
Love it.
We're gonna go ahead and move to our next one, which is gentrified or gentrifying.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so today we will be looking at whether or not the neighborhood of Los Feliz and Atwater Village are gentrified or gentrifying. The term gentrification generally means that an area is undergoing several changes, like going from looking like a simple neighborhood to looking more modern. This term also comes with many other factors like higher rents, a decrease in minority population, and higher home values, plus many more factors. If you can click on gentrification characteristics, Mateo. Yes, thank you. So here we can see other characteristics. And so if you scroll down, we can see Los Feliz, which is considered a gentrified area because of the high home values and the entertainment that it has. So an example of the entertainment are the Griffith Observatory and the Greek Theater. So those are some of the big ones there in this area. Now at Atwater Village can be considered a gentrifying neighborhood because there is a division between simple and modern, as we can see on the map. Glendale Avenue is more gentrifying than Fletcher Drive, which is below. So one is gentrifying and the other is not. And then, so a little bit of history. In 1933, the Homeowners Loan Corporation was started, and this organization assigned a color to each city to distinguish between the good and bad areas, and they decided if they were worth investing in or not. So green was the best and red the worst. If we take a look at the whole redlining map, we see that Los Feliz was a combination of colors, but an important part to highlight is the green area, which was the one closer to Griffith Park, which today is an important part of the Los Feliz neighborhood. And Atwater had a combination of yellow and red, which was considered declining. And if we take a look now at the property crime rates in both neighborhoods, we can see that Los Feliz has more property crimes in 2018 compared to Atwater. If you click the next slide, so I just put a picture of a home in each neighborhood. So the next slide shows Atwater, a home at Atwater. And if you scroll down, we have the Hispanic population map. And the map on the left shows data from 2010 through 2014. The map on the right shows data from 2019. And if we compare both maps, we can see there's a decrease in the Hispanic population in both areas, especially in Los Feliz. Down, if you scroll down, there's the average household size. And when looking at the average household size, we see that households in Los Feliz have about 2 members. Atwater has 3 or more. And from 2010 to 2020, there is a slight decrease in household size for both areas, especially in Atwater, closer to Glendale Avenue, which is where the gentrification is happening. This slight change means that the area is in the process of gentrification. Now the other map, it shows the household income. When looking at the household income for both areas, these maps show that there is an increase from 2010 to 2018. The most visible increase in income happens at Atwater, where the income goes from 56,000 in 2010 to 110,000 in 2018, which is yet again another sign of gentrification in those areas. And that's it.
Great, thank you very much. A good show. Now we'll go to the next one, which is gentrification through housing.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Juan Aviles, and along with my colleague Jorge, we're going to be talking about gentrification through housing. And the areas of interest that we're going to be discussing, if you can scroll down just a little bit, please, are going to be perfect. Koreatown, Pico Union, Westlake, Mid-City, Mid-Wilshire, and Hancock Park. And in terms of just some of the demographics and wealth, There is a concentration of wealth that kind of starts in mid-city, goes up north a little bit. And here we have the demographics of these areas. K-Town, Westlake, and Beagle Union are predominantly Hispanic and Asian, as you can see here. And some of the wealthier areas like Mid-Wilshire and Hancock Park are predominantly white. And I'll pass it on to Jorge.
Right. So I'm really glad that we went after Daisy and Catherine because they gave a really good rundown of the whole redlining concept. And as you can see here, Hancock Park and Mid-Wilshire were, mostly blue and green, and Mid-City, K-Town were mostly yellow, and Westlake and Pico Union are mostly yellow and red. And we actually read a really interesting article about this during our course by it's Block and Phillips. But anyways, one of the things I wanted to convey here was just basically there was that in many cases working class communities with both topographic features, functioning public transit infrastructure, and operational schools and businesses, suitable housing stock were color-coded red because of demographics and often their racial composition alone. So just to go down a little bit further, we have this map that has median income and educational attainment. And if we go back to the map, and you can see that Hancock, just a little bit up, please. Yeah, so on the left here, right under the red lining, please. The one with the slider. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, so on the left, the blue one, we have wealth. It's a median income. Hancock Park obviously has the highest, and it goes down as you go south and east. And if you look on the right side, you can see educational attainment. When darker means that it has a higher educational attainment. So you can kind of see a correlation between wealth and educational attainment, which I think is pretty important. So now that I think we've kind of broken down the redlining, the demographics, educational attainment, and median income, we can kind of start looking at what the housing situation is in these locations.
And if you can, right there, the average rent, 2015, a little up, please. Perfect, thank you. Yeah, so depending on either option, if you're trying to rent or own a house in these areas, the options are frankly grim. In 2015, the average for a one-bedroom apartment in an area like Koreatown was about $1,480. And in January 2021, that was about $1,824, a little over $350 increase in just a few years. And if you go just a little bit toward Mid-Wilshire in 2015, it was a little under $2,000 for a one-bedroom apartment, just on average. And in January in 21, it was about $2,400 a month. So if you can't rent, you're thinking, oh, maybe I can purchase a house. So if you look at the median homelessness prices in these areas today, it is frankly unattainable. If you're trying to get a house in Hancock Park, it's about 1.9 million. And if you're looking at around Pico Union, it's about 750,000. And when you consider the population density in these areas, Koreatown and Westlake particularly are some of the most dense areas in not only LA, but just the United States in general. There's not a lot of housing available. And in terms of the housing, Jorge,
oh, apologies. Are you guys finished?
You're muted, Jorge.
My bad. I'm sorry. Can we go back up a little bit to the medium home listing price? Right. So if you look at these prices, it's obviously a lot for like every area. But if Park, the median household income is about 150K. Mid-Wilshire is 3,000. Mid-Cities, Koreatown is 45,000. Westlake is 38K, and Pico Union is 5,000. So if you're anywhere but Mid-Wilshire and Hancock, you basically are not making enough to buy a home there, which I think is really reflected in this next chart. If you go down a little bit to where the pie charts are. There we go. Right. So unfortunately, this map wasn't mapped out like by neighborhood, but you can see that in Mid City, in Cape Town, the home ownership rate was only about 21%. Hancock, Mid Wilshire, it was up to 32%, and in Pico Union, Westlake, it was down to 17%. So really, you can really see how income and demographics can really determine your ability to buy a house.
And
does that conclude your presentation?
we can stop there if there's not enough time, but there's a little bit extra. Sorry if we ran over.
Oh,
No,
go ahead.
let's finish. This is good. I'm a historian. I'm enjoying all of this. Let's stay with this, and then we can ask the dean to close us out after our presentation. So nice job, you guys. But finish, Pablo.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. And yeah, so sociologist Alan Scott in his article, Residential Adjustment and Gentrification in Los Angeles, defines gentrification as having taken place if there's a few elements present. For example, if the number of white collar residents increased by 50% or more from 2000 to 2015, also if the median income of the population in 2000 was 24,000 or less, and if the change in median income from 2000 to 2015 was 5% or more, in contrast to the entire county. And essentially, when you look at this in his article, he analyzes that essentially gentrification is taking place in 4 out of the 6 areas that we were looking at. Pretty much the only areas that have not had gentrification hit them in these particular metrics are going to be Mid-Wilshire and Hancock Park. That doesn't mean that people are not getting pushed out of those areas. It just means that with these, clear metrics, it is happening. And Jorge will conclude.
Yeah, so really, with everything that we've shown, we just want to show the relationship between the HOLC map that was made back in the 30s and how there's a correlation between educational attainment, median income, and home ownership in these areas.
Fantastic. Thank you both for that informative presentation. Now we're going to turn it over to our last group to close us out for the evening, which is social issues confronting residents in South Los Angeles.
Yes, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Today, Martha and I will be presenting on the extreme poverty levels for residents of South LA and how this leads residents rent burdened. So Martha will then offer resources that support local residents, but we'll be focusing on the areas of Vermont Knolls, Manchester Square, Vermont Slauson, Gramercy Park, and Florence. So if we can, I'd like to scroll down to our first map, which starts by showing the percent of residents that are living in poverty. So anything in dark magenta means that more than 25% of residents in that area live below the federal poverty line. And just for context, the USDA considers living under the poverty line to be a combined household income of $35,600. And if you click anywhere through the map, it'll also show you how many people and how many children are living under the federal poverty line in that area. And as you can see, South LA experiences very high levels of poverty. So in the second map, the dark magenta means that more than 50% of residents live below the federal poverty line, which is sadly true for a number of residents in South LA. And the next map shows the median household income. The white shades show income levels are on average below 30,000, and lighter shades of blue represent income below 30,000 that are between 30 to 60,000. So as you can see, income above 90,000 is almost non-existent for residents in South LA. But as you move a few blocks west towards like the beach areas, income drastically increases. So the next graph shows, so our assumption was at first that since residents in this area have low levels of income, that housing costs in the area may be affordable. However, as it turns out, most of the homes are valued between 200 and 400,000. And as we will see in like upcoming maps, most individuals are extremely rent burdened. But there hasn't been much development in these areas in recent years, so the supply of housing doesn't really match the demand in these areas. But the next map, our purple map, yes, that one, shows the average home values in the area, but I'd actually like to move on to the next graph just for time. Yes, so It's recommended that individuals spend no more than 30% of their gross income on housing costs, but however, as this graph shows, most individuals in the area that we're studying in Los Angeles, in South LA, are spending more than 50% of their income just on rent. And this means that they have less funds for healthcare, they have less funds for transportations, groceries, childcare, education, and other necessities and such. And this last map, yes, in this one, the yellow means that renting is more predominant, while red means owning a home is more predominant. And because residents are living paycheck to paycheck, it is no surprise that more people are renting in LA versus owning a home. But yeah, I'd like to pass the mic to the wonderful Martha for our next section.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anaid. That was wonderful. Considering that Los Angeles is considered such a big and ever-changing metropolis area of change and gentrification, our focus here is any available public service. So with this map here, we like to focus on traffic accidents as well. We want to see if we can zoom in a little bit on our highlighted areas. If you notice, there's a lot of vehicle versus pedestrian accidents, and usually we've noticed that they're mainly along major roadways. And I mean, which brings up the issue, like, why is this happening? There's a lot going on. So this is regarding traffic accidents in our area here. If we can scroll down a little bit more. So a public service such as food access is the accessibility and how extremely important it is for residents to easily find and obtain the food items that they need in the time of need, which is food insecurity that they might be experiencing. There's roughly 40 free food pantries available in our concentrated area of our 4 zip code areas. The next focus, if we can scroll a little bit down here. If you can, I'm sorry, if we can just go back a little bit more up. I just wanted to highlight that the green blocks here, therefore are mental health, any type of mental health services that the city provides for the residents of LA. And counseling service, there are 11 locations in South LA that offer them as well. We can go down on the map, please. So this next map is interesting, and we wanted to highlight the job accessibility by public transit. We feel that it's very important for residents to obtain easy public transportation so that they can get to and from their employment. If you can see on the green areas here, these green areas mean that over 50,000 jobs can be accessed by public transit in under 30 minutes. So that's great. People can go to and from their work, and the purple areas mean that most jobs in this area would require a commute of over 30 minutes. And if you see the yellow, red, light blue, and dark blue and green, these detail routes of red line, yellow line, blue, and green lines of public transit as well. We can go down the next map. So I just wanted to detail that since there hasn't been much development in South LA, which is why it's not as gentrified as surrounding areas, and they're experiencing extreme poverty, and we're more in need of resources to our residents. Seems like it's a very forgotten neighborhood in comparison to the rest of LA. So that concludes our presentation, and thank you for touring LA.
Well, thank you very much for a wonderful conclusion to our night of impressive presentations here.
This is great. I just wanted to close out very fast that I am so proud of every one of you, the faculty and the students. Again, I'm just so grateful that you embraced big data and were able to produce and really develop such wonderful insight. We are going to keep time, which I'm excited about. And so again, every one of you should clap for your accomplishments. Seriously, every one of you clap just extensively. Every one of you are so important to this knowledge that we're building at CalSTAT LA. So once again, thank you so much. To close out our evening, I want to reintroduce our Dean Villanowith, please.
Well, there's not much I could say after that. It was pretty amazing. You took us from the Pleistocene up to the issues that we're facing today. So I couldn't have asked for more. I learned, and I hope you did too, the impact of using big data, but also the impact of visualizing it. You don't have to have sat there in your course for 15 weeks like you did or whatever we are on now. Instead, I was able to just learn from your presentations, and that's the impact right there, that you could present all of this stuff that takes years to compile and put it in such a way that really anyone can absorb and learn from. So good for you. I'm proud. It's awesome. I hope you take this on beyond Cal State LA like you have in the communities and continue this type of work. I thank the faculty and all the folks on the Big Data Grant team for helping out. And of course, first and foremost, or the students, you did it, and continue doing it. Continue doing the good fight. Right on.
Let's all remember the Seed Scholar applications are due in a week. And so anybody who participated in these courses is eligible for a paid summer internship with a city department. This gets you in line for jobs and for internship projects that will get you jobs, working with nonprofits, with community organizations. We have more spots this summer than we've ever had in the entire program because we are burning this budget. I'm spending every penny that they've given us. So to that end, you need to fill out your portion of the application, students, and then you send it to your faculty member. They're going to rate your technical skills because we need to kind of have an idea of which projects exist in which city department. And then they send it to us, and then we will hopefully get everybody who applies, or as many people as we can have applied, positions with the city this summer in paid internships. They're 20 hours a week. It's not full time. You can do your other job at the same time. You can go to summer school at the same time. You're going to work out your own schedule with the city department. Okay. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you.
Yeah, I know you. It was so good to see you. Thank you.
Yes, so good to see you.
I know. INIU was my student. I was so excited to see her, but I didn't want to like interrupt anything. I am so proud of every one of you. Again, please apply for the Seed Scholarship internship. Your faculty members will send you the information again. And I encourage you, Catherine, Cairo, every Amy or Jaywan, Matthew. Let's do this summer. Okay. So I will send you on your way. Thank you so much for sharing space with us tonight, and have a good evening. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
You have a great night.